Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and we very often talk about entrepreneurs solving real life big problems that not just we face in the business world, but in society as a whole. And today's entrepreneur is not just talking about this one societal problem, but she is actually solving a big problem when it comes to student housing, especially short-term student housing. It's an important gap that so many students across the United States face literally every few months. This is a real problem for people. So today's entrepreneur is plugging that gap in really cool and innovative ways. So let me tell you all about her. Her name is Nancy Schwartz. After having a successful career as director of advertising for a Fortune 50 firm in New York City, Nancy and her husband moved to my favorite, Boston, Massachusetts, where they have raised their family, which includes graduates from the University of Maryland, Indiana University, and the University of Pennsylvania, and the State University of New York at Albany. Nancy founded the JJA Group, which was a rental housing business providing off-campus housing for students in Albany. However, as the mother of 3 study abroad alums, solving the one-semester housing dilemma was a mission. The idea for Semester Sublet percolated for over 8 years, and 1 year ago, Semester Sublet was created. You're going to hear some real-life stories from Nancy here today, even just talking to her off air about the real life impact and how it solves these pain points for students. And yes, any parent who has had a kid in college, I'm sure that you've all felt that real need as well. So hearing from Nancy, we're all going to get inspired to move forward in solving the own problems that we care about. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Nancy Schwartz. All right, Nancy, I'm so excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Heck yes, and you are right down the road from where I grew up, so it's so cool that you and I have that in common. I didn't tell you off the air, I was also born in Albany, so we've got quite a few things in common, Nancy, but the one biggest uniting force is our love for business and entrepreneurship and serving people. So let's go into your story. Take us beyond the bio. Who's Nancy? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm so excited to be here with you and to meet all of those entrepreneurs out there. I went to college thinking I was going to get into the business school, and in my first semester of freshman year, I failed math. So I had to come up with another way to not only get through college, because, I just wasn't a math mind, but to be able to get into the business world because I knew that's where I wanted to be. And originally, I really wanted to get into the business of travel and, publishing. I was really open to a lot of opportunities. And it was just finding the right job after I graduated college with a combined double degree in psychology and English. I thought that would help me when it came to marketing and advertising, and indeed it did. So, through a couple of great jobs right out of college, I landed an opportunity with an international business publication where they were posting for an advertising sales rep. And I asked the vice president of sales if I would be able to apply, if I would be good at that. And he said, I think you'd be amazing at that. So I was hired, I was trained, and 2 years later, I became the director of that division. And I really, really was honored because the executives liked that I was very creative and I was coming up with new products. And I was very good at building relationships with our advertisers. So, but then we moved up to Boston and I sort of said goodbye to that career. And I had a stint at Boston Magazine. And then we started having our family. And that's when my first 2 children were young, I had in mind a long time, it was percolating, to buy a couple of houses and rent them to college students at SUNY Albany, where I went to college. So I had my finger on the pulse of where the kids wanted to live, and that worked. I mean, I would bring brownies when I would come to visit the kids. The parents liked me because I was always taking care of the student housing. It wasn't like I was a slumlord. And it was really, really very enjoyable. And 9 years later, it was time to move on. And, time has taken me through having my children in college, my college students. But really, it was the experience when son number one at the University of Maryland was going abroad. He was going to study abroad in Copenhagen, and we were in a panic because he was in a brand new building and he had signed a lease, and the rent was over $1,000 a month. And he was going to be away for the spring semester, and we needed to find a subletter. So I contacted the University of Maryland Study Abroad office, and they offered no help, no assistance whatsoever. Fortunately, through word of mouth, we were able at the very last minute to subsidize tremendously the apartment, and somebody rented it from us. The same thing happened with my son, who was at Indiana University, and the same thing more recently with my daughter, also at Indiana University. So after all this time, 8 or 9 years, this idea was in my mind that there has to be a way for parents and students to advertise and showcase their sublets, and to the audience that needs sublets, a way to find them. So that's where the idea came from. I contacted a website development company in New York City, and they put to the site all of my wishes, and we have a very easy to use platform.
Yeah, I love that overview, Nancy. My only complaint is, why were you doing it in Albany? You could have been doing it in Waltham. I would have taken cookies and brownies. With all of that, though, what I really love about your story, and it's true for so many entrepreneurs, is that you obviously experience these problems firsthand. You talk about those experiences with your own children. But what I really love, Nancy, is that you solved those problems the first times with your children when you had to go through that. But then somewhere along the way, you said, you know what? I want to invest my time and my resources, and I want to solve this problem for complete strangers, people all over the country, families all over the country. What was that catalyst? What was the spark for you to actually say, I don't just want to be aware of it, I want to be part of the solution?
Well, I mean, not to be egotistical about it, but I really was onto something. There was a need. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of students study abroad every single year. Literally, all around the world, kids are studying abroad, whether they're leaving their European countries to come to America, or, American kids going not only to, Europe, but South America, Asia. There is a market. And as an entrepreneur, you're looking at opportunities. And when you hit on one and you say to yourself, okay, maybe I can break into this market. And if so, wow, maybe I can take it really far. That's what got my juices going and led me to where we are today.
Yeah, and obviously taking into account your professional background as well as the director of advertising for a huge and successful company, I want to hear how that played into, and actually, I don't even just want to use past tense, how it plays into the way that you view business, the way that you view Semester Sublet and scaling and all of those things. I'd love to get some of those insights.
Well, as I mentioned before, I was very, very successful in my career as director of advertising because I was good at establishing honest relationships with my clients. And, if you have a good product, you're not really selling it. You're providing somebody with a solution. And you don't have to bang them over the head. It comes naturally. And so my job, I can look back and kind of say, you know what, it was somewhat easy because it was a great product and it was well known in the market. And I just kind of helped it grow and created other avenues, sort of. This is a great product. This is a great product fulfilling a need, and I can relate. So it's very honest. We all need it. All parents of college students, if your child is thinking about studying abroad, you're going to be faced with what do you do with housing for that one semester. that they're away. If you've committed to a lease, you've got to think about this. If you're not committing to a lease, well, then maybe if you're subletting from somebody else, well, then there was a sublet connection somewhere. So it's, the advertising point of it is just telling people, I have a great solution to a big problem for you.
Yeah, I really appreciate those insights, Nancy, because also what I'm hearing from you, it sounds so simple when you say it, is just if you have something good, it sells itself. And I think that that's something that we complicate it as entrepreneurs. As someone who talks to a lot of entrepreneurs, I can't tell you how many times I hear that someone is an innovative, groundbreaking technology that's going to do X, Y, Z. And the fact of the matter is, Semester Sublet, we actually know, even if nobody knows what you do, they know from the title of your company the gap that you're plugging. And so if they have that problem, they know to turn to Semester Sublet. Talk to me about the way that you've structured it. You talk about reaching out to a web design agency, and it's cool seeing your platform in effect. I mean, there's listings right there. There's really not many questions when you land on the website. Everything is at your fingertips. How have you structured it? Obviously, you went through it as a mom, but I want that executive hat on as far as how did you lay it all out so that it's user-friendly and starts attracting people?
Well, thank you for that nice compliment. The idea behind the site was ease of use, because there will be parents who might not be as tech savvy as their college students. There will be college students who don't want to spend a lot of time, who need to take this and have it done. And how do they upload their photos of their apartments easily and quickly? How do they list the benefits of renting their apartment? Well, we have these drop-down menus with all kinds of amenities. All they have to do is click on the boxes. So we really wanted to make this experience as easy as possible. And I'll be the first to admit, maybe I'm not the most tech savvy. My kids would definitely agree with that comment. But I love how easy my site is to use. When people ask me, how do you do it? I mean, it's literally 3 steps and you hit post. I will say though, it doesn't go live. Listings don't go live when somebody hits submit. It comes to the back end and our staff reviews every photo and every listing, and then we preview them, and then we publish. So there is a process on the back end, but it's real easy to use, and we don't even limit photos. I mean, we limit photos up to 9 photos, but you don't really need to tell the story with more than 9 photos.
Yeah, and to that point, Nancy, I'm on your website, so I'm going to share it with listeners since they may be on the go. It's literally 4 drop-down fields. So the semester that you want to sublet, the school that you go to, you pick from the calendar, and then the room type, and then that's it. You literally click one button. And so I love the way that you've laid that out. Obviously, you've thought about this as a parent who's gone through it before. I want to ask you this strategic business question, though, because it's one of the earliest business lessons I learned right down the road from you when I was a student at Bentley University is the difference between customers. Who's your customer? When I started my soccer blog, I thought that my customer was my readers. Little did I realize my customer are the ones who are writing me the checks. It was the advertisers. And so in the case of your business, I think about, having been a college student myself, I think about the students, the ones who are supposed to be taking care of our business, but the more important customers are parents who help us with so many of these things. Nancy, from a strategic business approach perspective, are you serving the students or are you focusing on the parents? Who's the end user here?
The parents. You're right. It is multifaceted, but ultimately, most of the cases we have encountered are parents on the hook for thousands and thousands of dollars for when their students go abroad. Or in some of the less happy situations, when their students are transferring out of school because it didn't work out. Or when their student is at a school in an apartment living with what they thought were their best friends and it's not working out and they have to move out. So ultimately, it's parents who are on the hook for thousands and thousands of dollars in addition to dealing with the stress and sometimes even the mental health of their kids. So really, the customer is the parent.
Yeah, I'm glad I asked. I honestly figured that would be the case because fortunately so many parents take care of all these things for us, and it's important, and obviously you fully understand that, and it helps in your messaging. It helps in the way that you service people. Actually, going backwards, you already kind of revealed that when you talked about your website of maybe the parents aren't as tech savvy, so we need it to be accessible to them. So I love how much that plays into the strategy that you roll out. Speaking of strategy, I want to ask you about partnerships, because just being on your website, seeing how many students and sublets at all these different amazing universities across the United States, how much do you plan on or already are? How involved would you like to see the schools as part of these partnerships? Because you've already been let down from your own kids' schools as part of their study abroad experiences. What's the long-term play here?
Thank you. That's a question that you can sit around our table with us as we're planning. So that's a complicated question, because the residential housing offices at the schools are really concentrating on their residence halls, the kids who are living on campus. Once students move off campus, it's kind of you're on your own. We might have an off-campus housing, an office to help with off-campus housing questions or legal issues around leases, but really the schools are not really involved anymore. The reach out to the study abroad offices is what we want to do, and that's part of our next phase of really reaching out, and in fact we're doing that now, reaching out to the study abroad offices and saying, hey, let's let everybody know that there is this platform available to them and that they're not just on their own, that there's somewhere where they can go, they can list, they can look and find. If a student is coming back from being in Spain for the fall semester, it's winding down. They're starting to panic because they need housing starting January 15th or so. So we have listings for them as well as for the students who are going abroad. Study abroad offices are beginning to hear our message. In fact, Michigan State University just added us to their list of resources, and it's slow, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah, I love that. And especially because just having interacted with you before our recording here today and seeing some of the stuff that you're already implementing, sponsoring college events, supporting fundraisers, there's so many cool things that you're doing. Talk to us about that market penetration, because I think it's so clever. Nancy, I expect nothing less from you, knowing that you are a brilliant advertiser at heart from your professional career as well. Talk to us about some of those inroads into the college market.
Thank you again. Something I'm very, very, very proud of is our involvement with the dance marathons at the big not even big universities. Many, many colleges and universities around the country have dance marathons where hundreds and hundreds, sometimes thousands of students are involved. And they raise money for the Children's Miracle Network. And what we have done is we have partnered and sponsored some of those dance marathons. And it's really, it's gotten us followers on our Instagram page, and it's gotten us listings, and it's given us a really warm and cozy feeling, because we're doing something good while getting the word out and working with the college students. So last year, we did that at 5 schools, and we already have now the infrastructure, the relationship is there. So we're going to be now the second annual sponsoring of the Syracuse Autothon and, the Gators and, the schools that we've been involved with, plus more. So it's really a good feeling.
Yeah, I love that, because truly, when I think about your business, Nancy, it's just that everybody wins. Truly, it's a business where every single side of the equation wins. And when you talk about that marketing plan, I mean, you're even talking about charities winning, which is so cool that you're supporting those events. My sister went to University of Kentucky, and she participated in Dance Blue every single year. 24 hours, these students are raising money. And the fact that Semester Sublet is part of that is actually incredible, and I love it. Although it makes me ask you this question, because when we talk about college, we have to talk about the huge expenses that come with college, and that's also something that I like. I'm just going to keep the wins and the good train going here with you, is that you're also addressing that side of the equation. A lot of people might look at your business and think you're solving subletting, but you're also solving the cost side of education and study abroad and these real needs. Talk to me about that emphasis, because the more we talk, it's very clear to me why your messaging isn't just about sublets. It's also about saving families and parents and students money.
Yes, it absolutely is, Brian. When we were talking before and you asked me who the customer is, and I mentioned that it's mostly parents, I have to say there are some students who are paying their way through college, whether it's through grants or financial aid or taking out loans. There are kids who are on the hook for thousands of dollars potentially if they want to study abroad. And in some cases, they have to decide not to study abroad because of the financial implications. And that's really unfortunate. The fact is, when you see seminars where financial advisors are talking about the cost of college, this is something that is never mentioned. Not the price of housing, because the cost of housing is included, but the food, the meal plan, housing, there are certain things that are always mentioned, tuition, of course, but a lot of students are considering going abroad. Even when they're in high school, that's a dream that they have. Well, this is reality. If they're going to go abroad, you're going to be facing a semester where there's a housing dilemma, and it's going to be an expensive one potentially. So I really think financial advisors and college coaches who talk about the finance of college, financing the college education for parents, they should really, really start talking about this. They should include this in the budget.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I think that was the most surprising thing for me as a student. I major in economics and finance. So even though my parents were, yes, helping me out a little bit during school as well, I was very fascinated by the financial ramifications. And I graduated with student loan debt. So it was a very real reality for me. And the fact that you're already thinking about this is incredibly important for all families. Not only thinking about it, Nancy, but again, I come back to, I love entrepreneurs, and you're actually doing actions. You are solving that problem for people. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing there. I want to ask you about the network effect, because the deeper we go into this conversation, it just sounds to me like there's so many stakeholders involved. There's the people whose places they need to sublet. There's the people who need to sublet those very places. There's the parents, the students. We're talking about study abroad offices. We're talking about financial advisors that can help families navigate these. Nancy, where the heck do you focus in all of these equations? There's so many moving parts. How do you balance that, and what do you focus on?
Well, that's a really good question, and sometimes I don't fall asleep at night because of that question. But I have to tell you, we haven't been live for even 1 year. We went live the third week of November last year. So our growth has been incredible, and I'm very, very proud of that. What I'm also amazed at is the fact that this has happened with virtually no advertising money spent. And I'll tell you why. On Facebook, there are many college Facebook parent pages. And many of those pages require you to answer some questions to ascertain whether you're phishing or you're, not really supposed to be on that page. So they ask questions about, do you have a student at that school, and what year is that student, and, things like that. And our staff and I, we will never, ever pretend or fib or lie that we're a part of the school if we're not. Okay. How do I get the word out to those folks? Facebook will not let me run ads, because anything to do with housing or subletting or apartment rentals comes under a very, very, very strict set of rules, and it's really hard to break into that. So we have not advertised at all on Facebook, but we have reached over 50,000 folks, men, women, parents on Facebook, because of sharing and sharing and sharing. So in this case, social media has really, really worked for us. The fact that there are avenues that we have to go down, and ways that we'll have to market. There are lots and lots of things coming, facing us, and we're going to have to figure it out. We are doing donations. We're getting in with Greek Life. We're getting in with the study abroad offices. We're contacting the study abroad companies. We're doing it. We're not even a year old.
Yeah, I love that, Nancy. Honestly, it's incredible. The other thing I really love, all of our guests who come on are so humble, and that's why, Nancy, I'm totally going to put you on the spot here and humble brag for you, because you and I were talking off the air about the real life stories, the real life impact. It's those heartwarming stories of people who were facing literally a multi-$1,000 dilemma for their students while they're also facing student loan debt and the rising cost of education and all of that. So, Nancy, I'm going to put you on the spot. The stage is yours. Give us some of those real life stories. You were telling me about some of them before we hit record today. I'd love for listeners to hear about those real life stories.
I have a student who wasn't thinking she was going to be able to go away to study abroad, and her 3 roommates were studying abroad, and she really didn't think she'd be able to do it because of her commitment to her lease. And she posted, she found a subletter, and she was able to study abroad. And that made me so happy. Just last night, as I mentioned to you earlier, Brian, I was out to dinner and I got a text from a mom thanking me. The listing wasn't even up for 1 week and they found a subletter. And I mean, that made me so happy. I'm hearing this more and more. But the fact is that if your student is paying, if you're paying $1,000, and in some cases in Wisconsin, I just heard $1,600 a month for some of these beautiful apartments. If you're paying upwards of $4,000 or $5,000 or even $7,500 for a semester, and then a lot of kids don't go back for the summer session, so you're potentially looking at 7 months of rent, $7,000, $10,000. This is extraordinary money. And if we're able to save parents and students thousands and thousands of dollars, what could make me happier?
Yeah, that's incredible. I love that, Nancy. Honestly, it's so cool to see the work that you're doing, opening doors and possibilities. That student who gets to study abroad now, she's going to remember for the rest of her life. Yeah, sure, she may not chalk it up to Nancy Schwartz, but the truth is the work that you're doing is literally changing their lives in this way. So I so appreciate all of that. I want to ask you this question, entrepreneur to entrepreneur. What's your growth plan look like? When you look at the future, obviously you have big plans and you want students and families all across the country to start utilizing this. What do those growth plans look like? Do you think in terms of years? Do you think in terms of number of users? I'd love to hear that.
Well, at this point, we're thinking in terms of semesters. We have on the website a section that we added for summer internship housing for 10 major cities, because summer internship housing is very, very difficult to find. So we have a section for that. The growth, I mean, I see it. I mean, our percentage growth over this year from last year is tremendous, and we're just going to do what we can to spread the word further and further. And we'll at some point we'll take on some advertisers, and maybe there'll be some income from listing, charging for listings, but that's further down the road. And for now, it's all fun, and we've worked out all the kinks in the website. It works perfectly, and it's user-friendly and easy to use, so I'm glad about that. I feel like we've accomplished a tremendous amount in 11 and a half months. We're going right now, semester to semester, year to year.
Yeah, I appreciate that answer. I'll tell you what, that's the one thing as a business school student, what I always heard was you have to have a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. And I think that COVID proved to the world, your plan's going to get thrown out of the window anyways. And so I'm a big believer in quarters. I personally, Nancy, you and I are similar. You operate in semesters, I operate in quarters. There's so much that we can do. And actually hearing you talk about the short timeline for Semester Sublet, It actually is crazy what you've been able to do, because we're going to drop your link in just a minute so listeners can go to your website. But even the functionality alone, ignore the UI even, because that's another huge project that you've absolutely crushed. But the functionality alone, you've gotten that right in year one of your business. That is incredibly hard to do. So I'm excited for listeners, whether they need your services or not, to check out all the great things that you're doing. But before we drop those links, Nancy, I always love asking guests for one piece of advice, one takeaway. You are also one of us. You are a fellow entrepreneur. So knowing that we're being listened to by entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs alike, what's that one piece of advice that you want to leave them with today?
Go for it. Just go for it. Fear of failure, forget those words. Go for it. And if you're having a hard time, ask for help. Ask experts for help and advice, but go for it.
Yes, it's the only way your work will ever serve anybody. And Nancy, you are a real life example of that. I feel like I've tooted your horn quite a bit because I'm a big fan of the work that you're doing, and I'm excited for everyone to check out your website. So drop those links on us, Nancy. Where should listeners go from here?
Well, our website is semestersublet.com. Our Instagram page is Semester Sublet 1. We are on Facebook, Semester Sublet, and that's really it. We don't really do TikTok. We don't really do. That's pretty much it.
I love it. Well, listeners,
we're always looking for bloggers. If anybody has a college student out there who's traveled on a semester abroad or is going, we're always happy to publish blog posts from students. We're always looking for influencers. That's another thing. We didn't even talk about that, but that's another thing. We're always looking for influencers. So it's all good.
Yes, I love those calls to action, Nancy. It's so important because, again, it just gets that message out there. So listeners, Nancy's made it super easy to find Semester Sublet. It is quite simply semestersublet.com. You'll also find those links to their socials and the website down below in the show notes. We're also linking to Nancy's personal LinkedIn. So if you do have a kid who wants to start creating content and getting published and showcase their study abroad semester and how easy it was to get their place subletted, or you are an influencer and you've got college students in your audience, or you're a college student and you want to really work with and collaborate with an incredible company doing great good in the world, here's your chance. Definitely check out the show notes. You'll find all of those links and so much more. So Nancy, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Brian. This has been a wonderful opportunity, a wonderful conversation with you. Thank you so much.